Welcome to part 2 of my RWBY review. The episode starts with the blonde guy throwing up. Let's hope it isn't connected to the quality of the show. Next, we see that RWBY is a weapons enthusiast and praises the weapons the various blacks and silhouettes carry. She calls the weapon an extension of ourselves, which is interesting considering that her sister Yang will lose an arm and replace it with a cybernetic weapon, making it a literal extension of herself. I wonder if that's just me overinterpreting stuff or set up for the future event. RWBY mentions that she thinks seeing new weapons is better than meeting new people, indicating that she's shy, socially awkward, or both. Likely her being 2 years younger than the other freshmen and her fear of being seen as special or different that were brought up last episode add to her nervousness of meeting other students. RWBY thinks she won't need friends as long as she has her sister, but Yang runs off with 4 of her friends and tells RWBY to do her best to make her own friends. Sadly, this is the last time we see Yang's friends. Hopefully they are okay. RWBY accidentally tumbles into the suitcases of v1e Schnee and knocks them over. v1e gets mad and tells RWBY that she could have caused damage to the dust that was mined and purified by the Schnee quarry. Interesting. So dust was created by humans, but it needs to be mined. Does it work like iron then? It's naturally occurring but needs to be refined before it can be used for its most important functions? In that case, I think the claim that humans created dust is a bit misleading, since they only purified an existing mineral. It would, however, explain how they could do it before civilization formed, since mining and purifying a mineral is easier than creating a completely new element. v1e shakes a bottle of dust around, telling RWBY how her bumping into the suitcases put everyone in danger, and it seems the cork on it isn't sealed properly and dust leaks out. RWBY sneezes, causing combustion, and v1e gets even madder. Okay, v1e carried around large quantities of explosive material. Didn't tie down the suitcases to the luggage cart they were on. The bottles containing the explosive material were only sealed with a cork, and v1e was shaking it furiously. And after all that, she got mad at RWBY. v1e doesn't seem like the sharpest tool in the shed, and might even get a Darwin Award at this rate. I consider this good writing though, because we are supposed to see v1e as an arrogant, out-of-touch elitist that blames other people for her own mistakes. The scene achieves that masterfully. My problem starts when the glass bottle v1e was shaking rolls out of the explosion undamaged and has stopped leaking dust. Wouldn't have the dust in the untied bottle also exploded? And how did the bottle get closed tight again? Did the pressure of the explosion press the cork in deeper, sealing it? Yeah, let's say the explosion pressure pushed the cork back in, sealing it airtight before the explosion could cause the dust inside to combust. This allows Blake Belladonna to pick up the bottle and tell RWBY and us that v1e is the heiress of the Schnee Dust Company, which is known for shady practices. v1e gets angry about that comment but struggles to find the right words to counter the claim, indicating that she wasn't confronted with it before, since she would probably have a counter ready if that was the case. I mean, even Blake had White Fang apologetics ready, even though she admits to Sun that she left the organization because she could no longer support their methods. This opens up some interesting possibilities. Will v1e slowly be exposed to the horrors her family company inflicts on the world? Will she see the abuse of power by her father's subordinates firsthand? Will she find herself in a situation where she stands with the very people that should be her enemies? Will she be forced to choose between her family interests and her own morality? Will she realize she can never regain the blissful ignorance she had about what her family did to the world? Will she have to apologize for everything she did wrong, with no hope of finding forgiveness, and then be welcomed back with open arms? Well, partly, but sadly it's not as well executed as the unrelated footage. Especially the part of seeing the Schnee Dust Company's crimes. We have a few things, such as Ilya's parents being killed by a mining accident, or Adam being scarred by a Schnee Dust Company branding. But the main problem with those scenes, aside from us only seeing the end result and not what led up to it, is that Weiss isn't there to see it. Something she's unaware of can contribute to her realizing how evil and messed up the Schnee Dust Company really is. Blake and Weiss walk off and Ruby sinks to the ground, being frustrated and lonely. Someone offers her a hand to help her get up. It's Vomit Boy, Jean Arc. Ruby takes his hand without checking it for bits of vomit. They have a bit of small talk, and Ruby shows Sean her gun sight, mentioning she built it herself, meaning she has knowledge of how her gun works and might be able to repair it should it break, which is a very useful skill. She asks him what his weapon can do. It turns out that his weapons were handed down from his great-great-grandfather, who fought in the Great War, and are probably the only weapons in the show that aren't also guns. I wonder if that means that there were no guns 5 generations ago. What stopped them back then to use dust to propel a projectile? Was dust not pure enough back then? Anyway, Ruby and Sean both realize they are lost, indicating that they are both fish out of water in the school, which can serve as a great way of explaining how the school works, since the audience will learn it through the eyes of the protagonist.